So today I want to have a little bit of a discussion with you guys about honestly one of the bigger topics surrounding the Nintendo Switch 2 and some of the backlash towards the system. And primarily the reason I want to have this conversation is I am someone who you could tell me something and I'm probably not going to believe you. Like, I need actions that go alongside of words. Maybe I'm just a bit jaded. Maybe I'm just a bit different than a lot of people. But especially when it comes to companies, like, they change their minds so often. They change their trajectories so often about what they're going to do and what they're not going to do, that you really have to show me with evidence that this is something that you are going to be sticking with either one way or another. And one of the biggest sort of conversation pieces around the Nintendo Switch 2 is the somewhat demise of the traditional physical gaming media. Now, of course, the Nintendo Switch 2 does have a cartridge slot, and games will be available on a cartridge pretty much if they're made by Nintendo. For most of our third-party games, we're starting to see the use of the game key card, essentially a card that you pop into your Nintendo Switch 2 and then you download the game via a server that card allows you to access to have a copy of the game on your system. Now, first and foremost, I am not necessarily against the game key card situation. I do think that there are some positives to it. I think having, a way to essentially sell what is a digital piece of media is something that is pretty important because, you might not want a game, or you might buy a game and you decide you don't like it. If you were to download that game from the Switch 2's eShop, you can't really do anything with that. There's no sort of refund policy. But if you are to buy a game key card, you could sell it to your local GameStop. You could sell it on Facebook Marketplace. You could trade it with a friend for something that's maybe more along your style. So I do think that there are benefits to the game key card, and I am definitely someone who has realized kind of the physical limitations of physical media, especially on certain platforms. But there are a lot of diehard people that only want to play physical media and nothing else is good enough for them, and I can understand that viewpoint. But with the game key card situation on the Switch 2, it's obviously something that's going to become a bigger and bigger issue as the system goes along. Doug Bowser, good old Dougie, did an interview with IGN about the game keycard situation, and I've seen people sharing this information and yeah, Nintendo's fully on board with traditional physical media, and I'm like, are they though? Are they really? Because you could say one thing, but if your actions don't match what you're saying, then your words kind of don't hold much weight. And as I look through the information that is given and I just start to think about what we actually know about game key cards, I don't really think they're being 100% honest. I think there is some very interesting language that is used that would excuse them from using a game key card instead of doing a traditional physical media. So Doug said when it comes to the Switch 2 and physical games in the immediate future, physical games are still a key part of our business. Now, right then and there, you should have a million red flags. In the immediate future, what does that mean? Because the immediate future to me means pretty much like what is coming up on the horizon that we see, we can touch, we can pre-order, stuff like that. The immediate future does not mean the future. Doesn't mean 6 months from now, a year from now, or something like that. That means what is coming right around the corner, not what is up the street a little bit. And that should just put a bunch of red flags in your mind because they're already kind of planting seeds, and you could always come back and be like, well, we said the immediate future. We didn't say the entire future. In the immediate future, physical games are still a key part of our business, and we value our relationships, in particular with our retailers, and want to make sure we have products available for them to sell to their consumers. When you look at a game key cards, for us, our goal with Nintendo Switch 2, similar to what we were able to accomplish on the Nintendo Switch, is to have the broadest and deepest library of content we can. He then goes on to add to explain that game key cards allow third-party developers and publishers to bring deeper and larger, more immersive content. So this is like, people are looking at this and being like, oh, well, Nintendo is not going to do any game key cards whatsoever, this entire system. And I just look at that and I'm like, okay, let's have this conversation. Because a lot of this is obviously stemming from the fact that we pretty much know that there is only a 64 gigabyte cartridge that is available for a true physical media sort of way. If you want to put your game onto a cartridge for the Nintendo Switch 2, it needs to be 64 gigabytes or less. Now, obviously, some of these third-party games are well beyond the size of that. You could do things like compression and whatnot, but if you decide not to and you just do a game key card, you can do that. But on the other side of the spectrum, you also have games that are much smaller than 64 gigabytes. On the Nintendo Switch 1, there were multiple different cartridge sizes that developers had access to. So obviously, the bigger the cartridge size, the more money it's going to cost in order to buy the larger cartridges. If you have a game that's a $70 game, maybe you can justify going out of your way to put it all on the cartridge. But if this is something that's a discount game or a budget game, a $40 or $50 game, is it really worth paying that extra money, which we've learned is around $16, in order to put the game on a physical cartridge? You have to remember, this is business, and these companies want to maximize the amount of money that they're able to get. So looking at third-party companies, I think you're going to see third-party games that are actual physical releases on the Switch 2 few and far between, just because mathematically speaking and time-wise speaking, it probably doesn't make sense for a lot of them. And I know that there's a lot of people on Twitter and stuff that are like, I would pay extra to get these physical games and true physical games from these third-party companies on my Switch 2. I hate to break it to you, but you make up a very small minority of people. You are not the average consumer. The average consumer is going to want the game as cheap as possible. And if it's a $40 or $50 digital version, that is what they are going to go for. If a company wants to take a $40 or $50 game and essentially make it a $70 physical edition, I mean, some people will buy it, but a vast majority probably won't. And you'd probably have to do some crazy collector's edition with some other stuff thrown in there as well. Other stuff, of course, costing money. But RGT, we're not really talking about third parties with this. We're talking about first party. And when you look at first party, the games that we know for the Nintendo Switch 2 that are first party games are indeed cartridge releases. Or are they? Because right now, we know of two confirmed games that are cartridge releases, and I'm sure the other ones that have been teased and announced are also cartridge releases, but let's just take what we have as far as what we know. And that would, of course, be Mario Kart World and Donkey Kong Bonanza. Now, Mario Kart World is, of course, an $80 game. Donkey Kong Bonanza is a $70 game. But there's another game that comes out on the Nintendo Switch 2 on day one that there is no physical release for it. The Nintendo Switch 2 Tour game. And yes, I use the term game very loosely. It's a $10 experience. Like, I get it. I'm not expecting that to get a physical release. But if we're using the same sort of mentality where physical is king, I assume a lot of people aren't going to play that. But I think a more interesting game that is worth talking about is a game that I don't even know the correct title for it. I call it Ricky Berwick Basketball. Essentially, it is a wheelchair basketball game. We got to look at this game, how it uses the Joy-Cons in an interesting way. I mean, it does look kind of fun. Like, I don't know the longevity of the game. I really think there should be some Nintendo specific characters and environments and stuff like that, but it does look like a somewhat fun tech demo of a game. Now, that's a very interesting game, because is that game going to get a physical release? Because I can't imagine that that's going to be a $70 game, or I guess by extension an $80 game. I kind of see that as being 40 or less, hopefully much, much less, depending on the amount of content that is in the game. But if Nintendo wants to release that as a physical version of the game, and let's say it is $40, are they going to make enough money? Like, how well is that game going to sell? I know there are some individuals who will buy it and are really looking forward to this game. I'm not really sure why, but hey, you know, games are a subjective thing. But I really don't think that wheelchair basketball is going to be a physical game. Now, yes, it's not going to be a game card either, but if that's a digital game, now you have to start to see what could potentially happen here. Some of these smaller experiences for the Nintendo Switch 2 that Nintendo makes may be digital only. Now, yes, we saw some games like that on the Switch 1, but I mean, Game Builder Garage got a physical edition. I actually own it, and that was a $40 game. So you might end up seeing a lot of these smaller titles, these sort of middle-of-the-road games, these not full-on crazy experiences, just fun little diversions, your Clubhouse games, your Game Garage Builder and stuff like that. These may be regulated to digital-only games throughout this generation from Nintendo, because in the immediate future, physical games are still a key part of our business, but things can change. And from what I'm seeing, I don't anticipate Nintendo wanting to use a 64 gigabyte cartridge on a game like this that is already being sold at a discount price, not a full retail release, and is a game that, let's be honest, is a lot more niche than your heavy hitter titles. And I think that's something that people are going to have to take in mind as this console generation goes throughout, and really keep an eye on it, because I honestly feel like you might not see Nintendo use a game key card, but you're definitely going to see them do games that are like $30 or $40 digital only releases with no physical release that probably would have gotten a physical release if there were different cartridge sizes available. Now, I do know that some of the cartridge sizes has to do with like manufacturing and stuff like that, availability, this, that, or the other. It's not something that I'm too like up to speed on with that when it comes to the various sizes and why or why not in this case they are not available. But this is definitely something to keep in mind as the console generation goes on, because I could definitely see them walking this back a little bit. And if you're a true physical game collector only, I think your physical collection might be a little bit smaller on the Switch 2 than you were initially anticipating. Like I said, I've kind of moved on from everything needs to be physical for me personally, because I like convenience. You know, it's nice. I'm a convenient person. Yes, I'm part of the problem, but you know what? At least I admit it. A lot of people out there don't admit it. Let me know what you think of this in the comments section down below, though, because I think I've laid out a very interesting conversation to be had about all of this stuff, because I don't think it's as black and white as Doug Bowser is trying to make it out to be in this, because of the terminology used and, more importantly, the actions that we are already seeing with the Switch 2. And as always, guys, thank you for checking out this video. If you are new to the channel, make sure you hit that subscribe button. Be sure to like, comment, and share. Hit the bell as well. And as always, I'll catch you guys on the next video. Later.